Welcome back. US President Donald Trump says he had a wonderful and productive meeting with Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan. Speaking at a joint White House press conference, Trump told Erdogan the US does not intend to part ways with its Kurdish allies in Syria. The US president also said he hoped the two countries will resolve differences over Turkey's purchase of the Russian S-400 air defense system. President Erdogan said the two countries could only overcome their disputes through dialogue. He restated that Turkey is fighting Kurdish terrorists, not Kurdish civilians.
First, we have to make a distinction between the two things. We have no problems with the Kurds. We have problems with the terrorist organizations. Some terrorists coming out of the Kurds. Which are they? What are they? PYD, Democratic Union Party, and YPG, People's Protection Units, which are offshoots of the terrorist organizations PKK, Kurdistan Workers' Party.
Two senior US diplomats have said President Donald Trump directly asked about a Ukrainian investigation into his Democratic rival, Joe Biden. Talking to reporters in Washington, Trump said he did not recall making such comments. At the first public hearing of the congressional impeachment inquiry, acting ambassador to Ukraine, Bill Taylor, said Trump was preoccupied with investigating Biden.
The member of my staff could hear President Trump on the phone asking Ambassador Sondland about the investigations. Ambassador Sondland told President Trump the Ukrainians were ready to move forward.
Bolivia's former president, Evo Morales, has condemned U.S. recognition of the country's new de facto government. Earlier, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo congratulated Jeanine Áñez, a Bolivian senator who became interim president. Speaking in Mexico City, Morales called for a national dialogue to end violence in his country. He slammed findings by the Organization of American States, alleging serious irregularities during recent election. He said the OAS is in the service of the North American empire and it took a political, not a legal decision. He added the appointment of Jeanine Áñez as interim president confirms the nature of the coup against him. Meanwhile, the interim president pledged to hold new elections as soon as possible. Israel and Gaza have reached an Egypt-brokered ceasefire to end 2 days of heavy fighting that killed 34 Palestinians. Al-Quds Brigade spokesman Musab al-Barim said the truce is based on a list of demands presented by his group. Al-Barim said Israel must also stop hostilities and ensure a ceasefire during Palestinian demonstrations. Israel's military says its raids targeted Palestine's Al-Quds Brigade. In Egypt, 7 people have been killed and 16 others injured in a fire caused by an oil pipeline leak in Bahira province. The health ministry says the injured are being treated for severe burns. The Ministry of Petroleum says the leak was caused by a failed attempt at theft which left a hole in the pipeline leading to an oil spill. Petroleum Pipelines Company Chief Abdel Monem Hafez said the robbery attempt took place in the city of Itali El Baroud in Bahira Governorate. He said technical teams have arrived at the scene and are working to plug the leak. Iran's president says the US intentionally stirs up tension and conflict in the Middle East. President Hassan Rouhani was speaking at the 33rd International Islamic Unity Conference in Tehran. He said this year's event will focus on Palestine and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. He said senior Islamic scholars at the conference will not allow the Palestine issue to be forgotten. Iran state media says over 350 leading clerics from 39 countries are attending the conference. The Secretary General of the World Islamic Schools of Thought Forum, Ayatollah Mohsen Iraqi, and 250 Iranian Sunni clerics are also there. Iraq says 4 ISIS militants have been killed in military operations in Kirkuk and Salahuddin provinces. In a statement, the Iraqi military said they targeted ISIS hideouts near the town of Hawija and Kirkuk. Iraq's defense ministry said a second search operation was carried out in Salahuddin province's Himreen mountain range. It said soldiers destroyed 5 tunnels and 3 ISIS hideouts and defused 20 roadside bombs. The country's security situation has dramatically improved since the military defeated an ISIS insurgency in late 2017. Surviving ISIS militants have established hideouts in sparsely populated areas. They use them as bases to launch guerrilla attacks against security forces and civilians. In Iraq, 2 people have been killed and 35 others wounded in fresh clashes between anti-government protesters and police in Baghdad. Protesters used sling shots to pelt stones at the police. Witnesses say security forces fired tear gas to break up demonstrators in central Baghdad's Kholani Square. Medics say most of those hurt had choked on tear gas or were hit by rubber bullets and taken to the hospital. More than 300 people have been killed since October 1st. Prime Minister Adil Abdul Mahdi's government has ordered electoral and constitutional reforms to quell the unrest, but he has refused to step down. China's President Xi Jinping says protectionism and unilateralism have damaged international trade and caused a global economic slowdown. Speaking at the closing ceremony of the BRICS Business Forum in Brasilia, President Xi repeated China's support for free trade and multilateralism. Leaders of the world's 5 largest emerging economies have criticized politically motivated protectionism. President Xi urged BRICS countries to boost growth and find innovative ways to deal with challenges.
Amongst all BRICS countries, when companies are confident, then the market will be vibrant. And I hope you will seize on the opportunity and mobilize more resources from the business community and actively invest and do more business in BRICS countries, including in the joint implementation of large projects that have economic and social impact, and which therefore have a major impact on economic development and job creation.
In Sri Lanka, an intense 6-week campaign for presidential election on November 16th has come to an end. The 2 frontrunners in Saturday's vote, Sajith Pramadasa and Gotabaya Rajapaksa, have held their final rallies in Colombo. More in this report.
Posters and leaflets jostle for attention on Sri Lanka's street walls. There is an election to fight and the end is in sight. Meanwhile, police have stepped up security across the country to head off the chance of violence on election day. 16 million Sri Lankans will cast a vote to choose a winner from 35 candidates. The main opposition candidate, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, is the brother of ex-strongman President Mahinda Rajapaksa.
I promise you all the programs in my manifesto will be carried out during my term. We will pay special attention to the national security of this country.
The ruling party candidate Sajith Premadasa is the son of the assassinated president Rana Singhe Premadasa, who was targeted by a suicide bomber in 1993.
We will further strengthen the anti-poverty program and then reintroduce my father's Janasaviya's anti-poverty program. We will provide assistance from both these programs and eradicate poverty in a short time.
This year, the country has been rocked by coordinated extremist bombings on Easter Sunday attacks which killed 269 people. However, a private poll monitor says this year's elections will be peaceful compared to the 2015 event.
7 people have been killed and 16 injured after 2 passenger buses collided in Indonesia. The tragedy struck shortly after midnight on a route in West Java that connects to the capital, Jakarta. Police say one bus driver lost control and collided with the other bus, instantly killing 7 people, including the driver. The driver who lost control of the bus was injured, but none of his passengers were hurt. The cause of the accident is under investigation. It's been around a month since protests erupted in Chile, and they are showing no signs of abating. This is despite the local police's use of brutal tactics to intimidate demonstrators, including firing pellet guns which blind people. The use of these so-called less lethal weapons first arose in occupied Kashmir, where they have robbed hundreds of people of their eyesight. This report has all the details.
Chileans have continued to protest against government corruption for weeks. This is despite a brutal crackdown by local police, which is using inhumane measures against them. This includes the use of pellet guns, which can leave people permanently blind. One doctor says this is the first time he's seen these kinds of injuries.
The number of blindness cases here is tragically high. much more than other conflict zones like Hong Kong or the Yellow West in Paris or Spain or the Palestine.
The Chilean police has also fired live rounds at demonstrators multiple times since the protests started. Despite the threat of being killed or left blind, people say they will continue to come out on the streets.
The truth is, I have more anger than fear, more hate than grief, and it is against those people who are out there shooting, mutilating people, torturing them.
The Chilean police's tactics are not new. In occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Indian occupying forces have been shooting Kashmiris with pellet guns since 2010. It can be argued that if the international community had taken strong action against the practice in occupied Kashmir, this crowd control technique would not be used against Chileans today.
In the heart of disputed Western Sahara, a former garrison town has become popular with kite surfers of all nationalities. They discover the windswept coast is perfect for the sport. Watch this report for more.
The water is warm and the wind is constant. Groups of kite surfers sail on the water all day long in Western Sahara.
The city owes its development to the wind, water sports condition, and above all, its nature and beauty.
In the 1970s, Morocco annexed Western Sahara, a former Spanish colony, and fought a war until a ceasefire was agreed in 1991. Today, ruined forts in the dunes and still in use military buildings remind tourists of the region's history of conflict. The area is booming with an influx of visitors, adding to fishing and trade revenue.
Dakhla has experienced enormous development in 2 decades. Today we have an international airport. We have flights that connect us to Europe and to the whole world.
Tourist numbers have jumped from 25,000 in 2010 to 100,000 today.
This old Spanish colony, and they have good seafood for sure. It's a part of Morocco. We are just near to Mauritania.
But with the flow of tourists, protecting the environment has become a major concern. For many, the real threat is from plastic waste, whether it's dropped by tourists or brought by ocean currents.
We are taking a short break. Stay with us. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell says the U.S. government is borrowing at a faster rate than its economy. In testimony to Congress, Powell said Congress must act to ensure a sustainable American economy. The central bank chief said the U.S. budget deficit has soared to just under $1 trillion in the fiscal year 2019, despite low interest rates. Powell said borrowing has exceeded $23 trillion, while interest payments jumped 10%. However, he said the U.S. economy isn't doing too badly, even with its debt concerns.
Negative interest rates would certainly not be appropriate in the current environment. Our economy is in a strong position. We have growth. We have a strong consumer sector. We have inflation that's a bit below target.
U.S. electric car maker Tesla is planning to build its first European factory and design center in Germany. Tesla CEO Elon Musk has blamed Brexit for why the firm chose Germany rather than Britain, in which to launch its new gigafactory.
At a German car award ceremony, Musk said the factory would be near Berlin's new international airport. He said the new plant would make batteries, powertrains, and cars. Musk said another factor behind the decision was due to Germany's engineering prowess.
Tesla's decision to build a large car and battery plant in Germany is a great success for Germany. In recent months, we have had one of the most intense competitions with various European countries.
Tesla's decision is a big boost for Germany as a center for manufacturing cars after BMW and Mercedes chose to build new factories in Hungary.
India's inflation rate has hit a 16-month high, hot on the heels of a slowdown in economic growth. Data released by India Ratings and Research shows that retail inflation breached the medium-term target of 4% set by the central bank for the first time since July 2018.
The sharp upstick in consumer inflation dampened expectations of a big cut in interest rates by the Reserve Bank of India next month. IRR chief economist says growth concerns will dominate the central bank's monetary policy review and could still prompt a rate cut in December. Earlier this week, the RBI reported that India's factory output contracted by over 4% in September to the lowest rate in 8 years. The central bank has downgraded its GDP growth forecast for 2020 to about 6% from its previous estimate of nearly 7%.
Stock markets across Europe are trading flat amid a reported stalemate in trade talks between the US and China. Banks and trade-sensitive automotive and mining companies are on the biggest drag on European indexes. Frankfurt's DAX index has lost a fraction on the back of a 3% dip in Daimler's stocks after it warned investors of a cost-cutting program would hit earnings. Investors are also trading cautiously after Germany reported it narrowly avoided falling into technical recession in the third quarter. London's FTSE 100 index is trading marginally lower as British private equity firms 3i stocks stumbled about 7.5% on poor first half results. The CAC 40 in Paris is unchanged. In Asia, Hong Kong's Hang Seng index closed nearly 1% lower amid continued political unrest. Tokyo's Nikkei 225 shed 0.75% on a slowdown in Chinese manufacturing output in October. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.